Good morning, everybody. Well, today's the day. I'm about to leave here in about an hour to head out on my trip. I don't know what the Lord's got me doing, but I'm doing it. Anyway, I'm about to bust up out of Egypt. That's what I feel like. I'm talking about them Israelites. They's about to bust up out of Egypt. And so I was kind of, anxiety stuff this morning. And so I had to come out here and I set my spot. I thought I was going to sit in my spot for a little bit, this morning and before I leave and gather my thoughts. And first thing I come out here and I see a honeybee. I didn't get a picture of him. He's too fast. He was busy. I was a busy bee. He'll swoop in real fast and get what he needed and then swoop back out before I can get a picture. I said, you ain't wasting no time this morning, are you? Anyway, so I was sitting here and I was reading my Bible. And I just happened to open to Ezekiel. And I was reading, I come from this verse. And it stuck out to me. And so that's where I get the title of what of this message right now is a fire set in Egypt. Because in Ezekiel 38 it says there's this prophetic declaration that is made that says, and they shall know that I am the Lord when I have set a fire in Egypt, and when all her helpers shall be destroyed. In the Bible, Egypt it symbolizes the a house of bondage. It symbolizes being in bondage. And that's where how it's a material world, it's the physical world, but we're in spiritual captivity within the spiritual world. I mean, within the material physical world, but we're in a spiritual captivity. So that's what Egypt symbolizes. Because of in Egypt there was the Israelites. They were in bondage and they were under heavy labor. They were slaves and they were laden with heavy labor, and there was they were totally reliant on Egypt for everything because they were in slavery. So they were. This symbolizes how we become reliant on material things, on our own humanity, on our own human strength, and over being reliant on God. Because what happened when Moses brought them out of slavery in Egypt was that they had to learn to be reliant on God instead of these human systems that they had been accustomed to. And that was one of the reasons why they were they were so used to it, even though they were in bondage and they were treated badly. They were so used to it. Moses led them out to freedom on the way to the promised land. They wanted to turn around and go back. They didn't. Because they couldn't see the promise yet. What Moses was trying to lead them to. They was led out into the wilderness, and once they got in the wilderness, they thought, well, Egypt was better than this. So this symbolizes this, being bound by structures of worldly limitations, and captive to forces that demand everything but offer no true liberation. Because that's when they were in Egypt, there was high demands on them that they were, they had to make bricks with no straw, and they had to make them bricks just as strong as bricks with straw. I mean, they were forced into these positions where they had these high demands on them, and they didn't have no way out. And so that's when God sent, Moses to lead them out. But it was ultimately God's hand that did the leading. So, but this fire, the fire that it's talking about here, the fire set in Egypt, is, it's not just it's not just something that's like the mechanism of destruction that, a lot of people look at the Bible and they see fire as, oh, this is a destructive force, and he's talking about destroying everything. But that is not the fire that's not the fire that, that, a lot of the Bible is talking about. It's talking about fire. It's the fire. The metaphor is a spiritual metaphor for the Holy Spirit. And how the Holy Spirit descends into the very heart of captivity, and acts as the ultimate deliverer. It was the Spirit of God that delivered the Israelites out of Egypt. The Spirit of God that came to Moses in the burning bush, in the form of a burning bush. It was a fire. And this verse highlights how, while Egypt's external allies and earthly helpers crumble because they lack enduring substance, this divine fire, is the fire of the Holy Spirit, consumes the chains of bondage rather than the soul itself. Fire of the Holy Spirit is a transformative fire that disrupts the status quo of oppression, and where human effort fails to break stubborn cycles of confinement. Things where I was talking about, these strongholds, whether it be individual or territorial or generational curses, things that hold, anything that is a chain that holds you back, whether it be alcoholism or drug addiction or whatever it is, this chain that holds you back and confines you. The Holy Spirit will penetrate that darkness and break those chains and burn away any illusions of worldly security, to forge a path toward absolute freedom. A lot of people like to hang on to things because it makes them feel secure. They just don't want to make a move because they're afraid they're making the wrong move. But once a fire in Egypt is ignited, there's nothing that can hold that power back but your own will to quench it. But if you let it burn, it becomes a consuming fire. And that's, the Bible talks about this. Our God is an all-consuming fire. And you'll be completely caught up. What that means is being completely caught up in a miracle, signs, and wonders of the glory of God. Where His glory completely consumes you. But if you do quench it, because out of fear or rebellion, or you know, if you turn from it and you don't let it burn, that spark, once it's ignited, you don't give it the oxygen that it needs to burn, then you'll miss out on the wildfire that comes from it. And you'll stifle the movement that's meant to sweep through dry places and the dry and desolate places that, of captivity. That, because just like a wildfire burns through a forest, it clears it out so that it can make way for new life to spring forth. And a lot of times that's what's needed, especially when someone, coming out of captivity, it has to transform the old to become something new. And so it has to burn away the old. And so ultimately, the fire that's set in Egypt serves a singular higher purpose to shatter the reliance on false foundations so that the soul may finally recognize that the true source of deliverance is the Lord. That's what the fire burns away, is those old patterns that you're so used to hanging on to. Those reliances on the things that hold you back. And ultimately what it does is it causes us to look completely away from our own finite capacity and demands that we rely entirely on His strength and His understanding. To trust Him in all our ways means surrendering the urge to chart our own course. Allowing Him to make our path straight. But we cannot walk that straight path without unwavering obedience to His word and total trust in His promises. We have to trust that God knows what He's doing, and He has our good. In mind, with the plans that He has and what He's doing and how He's leading us. That's what faith is. When Peter stepped out that boat to walk to Jesus, he had his eyes on Jesus, and he was walking on water. His faith held him. But as soon as he doubted, he sank. But Jesus was still right there. And He pulled him back up. Jesus is the ultimate security. So, by abandon the fragile security of Egypt, because the world's security is fragile. Everything that the world uses to prop you up and build you up is fragile. You can make every plan on everything in the world, plan everything out perfectly by the world's standards, and it still fail. We have to align our steps with His truth. And that fire that once signaled judgment becomes the light that guides us, and it'll guide us home. That's why I put my faith and I trust in God, because I know how big a God He is. He's brought me out of many Egypts. So, anyway, I love y'all. Stay tuned.